Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GenAIOps Lounge, a podcast where we have the ambassadors and wider guests from the AI community, where we're going to be speaking about generative AI, how to implement it in the real world, and that actually delivers value. So, we're joined today by a bunch of experts and ambassadors for the Center for GenAIOps. I was thinking of starting of going around introducing yourself and how you are involved with generative AI. So, Vitor, I'll come to you first.
Well, thank you. Vitor Domingos, lead solution architect and all things GenAI evangelist at Itachi, based in the UK. And it's been an interesting journey with GenAI, and in particular with GenAI Ops. How are you going to operationalize all of this things that we're doing with GenAI? I'm involved because we have a lot of interesting projects with our customers, and all of them are looking into how can actually make things better by implementing GenAI within their operations, within their own projects. And there comes a lot of complexity around it to manage, pretty much a life cycle of implementing all of this. So, and I think that GenAIOps might be it is actually the next step forward if we're dealing with large language models or agentic operations or anything like that. So we need a bit of structure, and I'm really excited to be involved with this group and talking to you guys today.
Cool. Toby?
Yep. So I'm Toby White. I'm going to be co-hosting this with Jamie going forward. I'm the CEO of a company called Artemis, which is primarily a strategic consulting group. We have development teams across Europe, really. What we primarily do is advise companies on how to adopt new technology, how to incorporate it into their day-to-day operations. So for us, Gen AI is really interesting because there's a lot of people experimenting with it and wanting to start using it, but they don't have anyone there to tell them what they should be experimenting with and where they should be taking this and how it's going to give them the biggest value in terms of their entire operation. So a lot of them are working with us around, Gen AI is great. It's really going to solve a lot of problems for us, but they don't necessarily know where to start and what from a strategic point of view, where they should be getting involved and where they should be prioritizing those efforts. So we're really excited at it with it from an operational standpoint. Also an ambassador for the Center for GenAIOps with the lovely three others around me, and very keen to see where we're going.
Cool. And then to the chief ambassador, Harrison.
Hey everybody, sorry, I shut my door. The dogs make some noises. Apologies about that. So I'm Harrison. I am one of the founders and chief ambassador of the Center for Gen AI Ops. I am also a CTO at a startup called Great Wave AI, where we're building agentic AI solutions for people to use essentially. And so, Jamie, on the point of why am I involved in Gen AI Ops? Hopefully, it's quite obvious. But do you want me to go into the sort of the origin, the ethos of how it began?
Yeah. So, I mean, for everyone's context, Harrison was one of the co-founders of the Center for GenAIOps alongside Glenn Robinson. So, how did that idea come about?
So, for the same reasons you guys have mentioned, is that there's this great new technology that has a load of value a load of surface level value at least, and a load of sort of deep level value in the enterprise space. But doing it and making it work in sort of regulated environments, typical large enterprises, it was like I need a thing to help me out. And at that time, there wasn't a thing to help me out. So if I go back to DevOps, actually, because that was sort of one of the origin stories. If you go back, I don't know, where are we now? 15 years ago, the challenge was, how do we develop and operate applications and software in an effective, reliable, safe way, blah, 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 right? And so DevOps, open the book of DevOps and you go, cool, now I know what I can do. I just need to transform everything to be DevOps and then we'll be happy and we can go through that, and be successful. With Gen AI, there obviously wasn't that because it's sort of still a brand new technology. And so not having that, we thought, okay, we can try and create something ultimately, and see if anyone has the same sort of beliefs that me and Glenn did at the time. And so we created the website. We put that out as like a beacon to try and attract people to it who had similar views, and we got a great set of interest and formed the ambassador program off the back of that, essentially. And yeah, we're trying to obviously do things like this podcast and trying to take our wisdom that we gain as ambassadors and bring that out to the community.
Yeah, that's super cool. And yeah, I mean, from me, so I'm Jamie, one of the co-founders and head of product at MyTender.io, which is an AI-driven bid writing platform design which uses GenAI to make the complex task of writing compelling proposals much quicker and easier, basically. So from my perspective, when I came across GenAIOps, it is the thing which is so desperately needed, I feel like, in the market. There's so much sort of misinformation out there. I mean, I'm sure we're all fairly active on LinkedIn, and you get so often uh, just hype and false information which gets posted. From your guys' perspective, open question. What do you think that everyone in the market of GenAI generally is getting wrong and overhyped about, and what are they sort of forgetting to remember about the core technology itself?
I think we've all got views on that. Who wants to go first? I'm happy to. Shall I just go first?
Go on, Harrison.
So yeah, this is a major problem, major frustration point. Obviously, is the hype in the market about things that are new and shiny but aren't really effective. And again, I'll just go back to the origins of DevOps again. When that first came out, it was about the culture. It was about working together. It was about a set of practices which weren't so rigid. And then all of a sudden, there was a million DevOps tools that came to market, which spawned a whole another level of complexity for people to understand actually what it was about in the first place. And I feel that's where we are going towards now with, we've got MCPs and the latest hit on the block, which is basically a way of dynamically selecting APIs, but it comes with its own limitations and additional constraints, such as it's a black box again, so you don't get that transparency, which is a challenge. But I think what's lacking is everybody's able to jump on the bandwagon quite quickly because the information is quite easy to get to, because GenAI makes it so easy to get to, if that makes sense. So you don't have to go and research, you don't have to go and read, back in the day, go and study a programming language with a set of books, drive to the exam center, do your exam while someone's watching you under massive pressure and stuff to prove that you're good at developing. You can just go and ask a question about it. So the bar to entry is low to understand. But I think I always get the name wrong, but it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, I think it is. And that's basically where you assume the people who don't know a lot assume they know a lot, and the people that do know a lot assume they don't know a lot. And I think that's sort of what we're seeing at the moment, where my experience working in enterprises, even just getting an API working in the first place is quite a challenge. Some of the clients that I work with haven't probably moved to the cloud yet, for example. So the sort of narrative from the industry is just non-compliant with where these organizations are in their timeline, if that makes sense. I think that's the bit. It doesn't help the real world services move forward. I'll shut up for a bit so Vitor or Toby can speak.
Well, if I can add some of the things I've been seeing, and we've been talking about hype and the market. Bottom line, the market is completely hyped at this moment, right? It's not just us; it's everyone. So it's a serious issues, because I think we've been doing working with large language models for 2 years, since the moment that ChatGPT, let's say, probably before that, but the consumer part of the large language model when ChatGPT got launched and a bunch of other stuff at the same time. So I'm talking about timeline of 2 years. But I think that for the past couple of months, the pace of technology innovation and everything that comes up, it's quite rapid at this moment. It's driving everyone into this kind of highway of hype of delivering things. And I think that the market is going to see some change in the near to near term, kind of midterm, let's say, because There's a lot of tools that probably in a couple of months are not going to exist. There's a lot of consolidation that needs to happen, and from an enterprise point of view, all right, you need to have a bit of of a solid ground and foundation that you can put this thing to your own internal users. So if we split the consumer market, which is completely driven by the hype, and I totally understand that. I love all of the things that Claude and ChatGPT and everything else is doing, and Studio Ghibli things that people are doing in the memes right now. I love that stuff in terms of technology. But from an enterprise point of view, they need resiliency, right? They need compliance. They need efficiency. They need to be responsible with the things that they're building. And I think that for the past 2 years, a lot of enterprises have been doing experimenting with large language models. We'll see how can that be adopted internally. How can they move their processes and the workflows and bring really automation with insights for the stuff that they're doing with context. And I think that when I joined the GenAIOps, the center of GenAIOps, there was a lack in the market of how we're going to make this actually more resilient, how people are going to understand what they need to do. And I think that our 12, is it 12? I think it is 12
Yeah.
principles that we have. They kind of come together in terms of what we think that people are, because we're talking to the center of GenAIOps is about the people that actually need to manage those systems and they need to deliver things. And we need a consistency, I don't know, understanding of how we're going to deliver this, and we need to figure out a way to do that. And I think that we are right now at that point, that everything comes along, and we need to figure out how we're going to plug these things together. And I do feel excited by that, and that's why I try to split the consumer market or the hype, and then the enterprise real world that you need to make sure that everything's are resilient, are transparent, right? There's governance on top of that. You understand the risk of while we're doing things, and that's a journey for some of organizations. They're still in the beginning. Some of them they need to go forward, but it's really exciting at this moment.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. I think from our perspective, it's very interesting to watch the minds of industry and how they want to treat this. From what I've seen so far, there's quite an equal split in terms of organizations that are saying, yes, right, everyone go mess around with ChatGPT and see what you can find, and let's try and get some quick wins, which is a bit of a risk. There's hundreds, well, not hundreds of thousands, maybe tens of thousands of different LLMs out there right now, all for very specific use cases. As Harrison was saying, some of them are not particularly useful. And Vitor, as you were saying, there does need to be a consolidation of that for sure. But I think, they're jumping into bed with these things without actually doing all the research, not realizing something else might be more appropriate for their specific organization. Something else, could deliver better results or be significantly cheaper, and then the other half of the industry, from what we've seen, is they are terrified of the intellectual property implications of any of this going into what they're doing, or certainly from a coding perspective, right? And they are blanket banning it across the organization, but then because there's 10,000 other LLMs available, they're just going, right, well, we're not allowed to use ChatGPT in the office, so let's go try and use this one instead. And then they're getting all the same results without the awareness. And that's the thing, is if this is going to happen in organizations, right? You are either aware that it's happening and you can control that, or you blanket ban it and you don't know what's happening, because if certainly with the people who are on the coding teams, if anyone's going to find a way around these controls you've set, it's going to be them.
But don't you think that we are in the same kind of journey that we were when some enterprises were blocking access to the internet to their employees because they couldn't control all of that, and then the iPhone, and then the iPhone appeared, and people got access to the internet on their iPhones, on their phones, right, on their pocket. So that goes all of the security controls that people and restrictions that people put forward. And I still see a lot of enterprises kind of blocking access to AI. if you're using iPhone, you're going to be late on the game in terms of AI.
Exactly.
But if you use Android on every other web app, it's easily accessible. You can use it, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's like it's the same as when we're in education, however long ago that may have been. I'm not really willing to stipulate, but there was all you were always not there were certain things you weren't allowed to do on the school network and within the systems, and there was always that one kid, sadly in our school it was me, that found a way around and could do whatever they wanted, right? That's going to be the same thing in organizations with using AI, because those people are the biggest evangelists of wanting to use this and using it to make their life better. And I think that's and make their life easier and make their work day more simple, So the second organizations start to understand the risks, but also the benefits of quality of code, in terms of deployment, how quickly they can test various theories, that's going to be really interesting for them. But if you are not open-minded to that, you are and you're closed off to it, it's going to happen under your nose and you're not going to realize, and that's where the risks really start to shine. Yeah, I think that's interesting. So leading on to that, I think it'd be very interesting. I don't know who wants to take over in terms of let's talk about the principles and what they are. We're going to be talking about that a lot over the next, probably through the life cycle of the entire podcast, to be honest. Let's give a brief overview as to what those 12 principles are and how we came up with them, Harrison.
Sure. So I won't go through all 12 of them at once, but these are essentially a set of principles that we use to ground ourselves. And everything we do going forward will be based on this. And everybody who signs up to be an ambassador reads this page and they hopefully agree with it, and that's one of the conditions of becoming an ambassador. But if I just go through the purpose of it, so it says that I'm going to read it out word for word because it's something we came up with and iterated over. So the development and operation of generative AI must be trustworthy, effective, and rooted in accountability. And so what the 12 principles do is try and give some guidance and things to follow to make that a reality. The first two are actually interesting. Let's probably go through the first two, because you just literally spoke about those two, probably without realizing it. But the first one's about the open collaboration and trust element of it, because organizations need to work together and not close it off. Otherwise, you won't get the benefits. You will get left behind, and you could seriously get left behind very quickly with this technology, because the rate of growth can just go suddenly like that with an AI tool. And there's all this talk about AI replacing SaaS, which is probably a topic for another day. And the second one was we lead with purpose and seek to understand. And again, it's the same principle of if we don't try and make effort to understand what this technology is good for, what our problems are, and always try and focus it from a problem perspective. Let's not try and look at a technology and say, cool, this is a great tech, let's go and find some problems it can solve. What problems do you think we have at the moment in the organization? And then let's marry up that with how we think we can solve them. And the lead with purpose element is quite key as well, because I'm just going back into the hype again. There's a lot of hype around, I forgot what was that Chinese, not DeepSeek, the agent, AI agent, Manus, that was the one, where there's, I don't know if it's real or not, but there's demos going around of it clicking around the screen and doing crazy stuff like that, which is great. But where do we need AI? Where can AI transform things? I always say there's many common public services which could benefit from it. Policing. So police officers today have to go and they go and do that on the beat, do the crime. They go back, and every time they go back, it's like 2 hours paperwork they have to do. So every time they do something, it's 2 hours back in the head office going to write something down. So police are on the streets, right? Teachers spending loads of time at night. It's one of the most stressful jobs because they do their work, they come home, have to plan the next day. And things like doctors and nurses, where having to do a lot of paperwork, they're the real, for me, they're the purposeful things we should be focusing on, where AI can make a difference. And so things like Manus AI look cool, a lot of hype around it, but actually getting into the deep depths and the weeds of trying to help the front line out is where the value is. So that again comes back to the purpose point of not just doing stuff because it's cool. It's really cool, and it's all into that sort of stuff as techies, but where can it be purposeful and meaningful, essentially?
And yeah, it's sorry, God,
sorry, it's my doorbell.
Ring.
Who has this ringtone?
I do. Yeah.
Is that fair?
How
release?
old are you? What
fair release?
No. It's the doorbell.
All right.
Doorbell.
Okay.
The kids. The kids get to choose the doorbell song. And yeah, there you go. Sorry, go on, Jamie.
Oh, that's just completely thrown me off what I was gonna say. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like the things which make a very cool demo from that OpenAI release, where they, speak into a sort of voicing, and it creates this, does some super cool thing, which makes a good demo, and the actual real world isn't very useful at all. So yeah, I suppose another interesting question is for Harrison and Vitor. Where do you guys see GenAIOps in 5 years' time? What would you want it to be?
It's so it's hard to, I chatted to one of the guys who created DevOps actually, because it was always like, oh great, DevOps is now world renowned. How did you get there with it? And it was a very organic process. So do things that we're doing now. We're trying to give some wisdom back out. We're trying to learn things, and we're trying to go basically. We've got a plan, but ultimately we're going with the flow of the industry and where we think the problems lie. So I'd like it to be adopted as a well-known terminology. Microsoft now use the language, which is absolutely fantastic. I'd like us, we're going to produce a framework, of course. I'd like people to see that as the go-to framework if you're trying to build and develop GenAI solutions. It's a bit like ITIL, for example, but not as rigid, at least as the old ITILs used to be. Maybe a bit like Agile and stuff. So it becomes a well-known term for people to use, and people generally get what the purpose is. And some of these, at least the top level principles, are sort of understood and well known. That's where I'd like it to be. And the reception so far has been it's been a global reception, which is great. And we've not really established that framework yet. And when we do, well, I just hope that people find it very useful, that we can start making a bigger impact. Your thoughts, Vitor?
Well, for me, I think that we have a bunch of practices from DevOps, MLOps, DataOps, everything ops, right? So GenAIOps, I think that at this moment, whatever we're doing with this part of the technology, that for the past 2 years has been focused on large language models. From now on, is going to be about agents. We need a standard. We need to be, the industry requires some standardization and governance and metrics and all of these things that are going to, that we need to put forward so that we can talk the same language, we can understand what everyone's doing. We have all the guardrails and the compliance that enterprises will require, and at the end of the day, it's a new practice, right? It's not. It's kind of the evolution of what we've been doing, and we've been through that. We've been through kind of no ops, DevOps, DevSecOps. Now we need to evolve into this, and I think that this center, the group of people that we have, and even the ambassadors are the perfect ones to take the leadership on that and explain not only what we're doing individually, but also how what is the impact that all of this will have on enterprises and then people in the future. And I think that our principles are quite clear on that. Harrison, you just covered the first two. We have 10 more to go. I think that hopefully on next podcast episodes we can cover all of them. But even the human oversight and the responsibility, I think that's going to be quite important in the near future. Yeah.
Do you think there's going to be a point in the near future where we experience kind of opsception, where actually with these LLMs and the intelligence that they exhibit, that where they can start designing their own operational principles and things like that? That's a real mouthful, but
it is.
Yeah.
Opsception.
They could do that today, but ultimately, if anything important, there's always got to be an somebody who's accountable for it. Yeah. Going back to just going through the case of like, if AI, if you use AI in an important area and you end up in court, you can't say, sorry, Your Honor, it was ChatGPT. He's not going to go and arrest Sam Altman, although maybe I won't say anything about that. But
for now, yeah.
But yeah, you could, of course, you could. And I think the MCP stuff is interesting in a way, even though it's not super practical at the moment for most people. That it's a protocol that can be defined and used by AI agents, and it's almost they become independent in a certain way, and that you can see that growing and growing. But we must always have that accountability and control, which is what the center's there for.
Sure. Well, we might cover that in the next podcast. But do you want to just give a brief overview as to what MCP is from a high level, just so we know and keep people excited?
Yeah. So MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. It was introduced by Anthropic in November 24 as like an open source thing. So the problem it solves is ultimately if you've got a it's a product solution, set of services, you're an enterprise or whatever, and you've got 100 APIs, for example. Without MCP, what you have to do is tell your agents which one to go and hit, basically. And it might be a different API you need to hit based on different circumstance. So as a basic example, you might have a payment system with a bunch of APIs, and you might have a CRM with a bunch of APIs. And what MCP does is if you ask a question about or you want to update your bank details, it knows to hit the bank APIs. If you want to talk about your address, I know it's probably a bad example, you'll go to CRM. So it's basically like using AI as a router for lots of APIs, which is great. And it helps with things like booking hotels and all that sort of stuff. And you can see some cool stuff for it. But just going back to the not to sort of it's just what I said earlier on about actually APIs are well architected by anywhere serious, if you like, and so exposing them in the first place, that it's highly controlled, it's highly regulated, and to suggest that we're going to let this AI thing come in and decide and give access to it to begin with to all our APIs, and then let it decide without someone saying yes or no is a massive step. When in reality is, in my experience, in my clients, they're just getting their heads around the basis of GenAI and why does it keep giving me a slightly different answer every time to a question, and that's where they're at. Right, they're nowhere near thinking about that. So I think it's really cool. I think it's got legs. I think it will get there with it. But it's not a silver bullet solution to integration. It's still needs to be thought about as all the words, all the illities, reliability, the availability, all that sort of stuff that
and for those that are old enough as I am, it's like a distributed enterprise service bus. So
exactly right.
I have no idea what that means.
Some people
people even older than you, it's like a switchboard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Toby, for that.
It's not. Also, it's not set in stone yet because people are saying, "Oh, isn't it just API management but with just an LLM in front of it?" So there's loads of things for it to play with.
Okay, well, let's cover that in the next session because I think that's a really interesting topic, and it's very hot and interesting right now. So yeah. Okay, so what was next on the agenda?
I think we've from my perspective, adding to that final point before we round up, is that essentially anything with LLMs running as its underlying technology does need that human oversight and that human in the loop to ensure that reliability. As Harrison just said, you can't be like ChatGPT wrote it in court, which is a good analogy. So yeah, I think when we had the event at the House of Lords and Stuart gave one of our other ambassadors for people watching gave a speech about whether we can trust AI agents autonomously. And the answer is, I think, for definitely the foreseeable future, definitely no, because they still are running off underlying LLMs, which are not 100% consistent, reliable, and accurate, and do things like hallucinate and etc. So I do think we're still quite a way away from having the sort of MCP stuff and agents which are autonomous, which I think is one of our principles, which we can come to in another session. But yeah, I mean, I think that's probably a good time to close it. Thank you everyone for thanks for joining, giving your insight, Vitor, Harrison, and Toby. And yeah, so we're going to be doing these podcasts every 2 weeks. potentially every week in the future. But we're going to be looking to not just get on only ambassadors, but also people from industry who are also working with AI and also want to sort of share their opinion and insights to help give back to the community. So thank you very much, and yeah, we'll see you in the next one.
Yes.
Cheers,
Thank
guys.
you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.